All right, we finish and begin Shavuos. Get Pashat. One of my not so favorite sugyas in Shas. Get Pashat, although not difficult. Get Pashat. Edav b'mitocho. Get Pashat, of course, is a get or any document, right? Even though it says get, we're not necessarily talking about get. It's talking about any document. Edav mitocho, the Edim sign on the inside. Makushar, a get makushar. Makushar, of course, is where you write something, fold over, right? We all remember that's again makushar. So me'achor, the Edim sign on the back. Now the question is how they sign on the back. Do they sign widthwise or lengthwise? Okay, that's going to be an ongoing issue this evening. They sign widthwise, then would be they sign on the back of the text and in parallel to the text. If they sign lengthwise, they sign on the back of the text and perpendicular to the text. Okay? And that's kind of ramifications. So when they sign parallel or perpendicular. Okay? So, a Pashat shekos Edim me'achorav, if you have a get Pashat which is non-folded, and the Edim signed from behind, or Makushar get which is folded, the Kos Edim Misocho, and you put the Edim on the inside, Shneim Sulim, they're both Pasuk and Tanakama. Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, Makushar shekos Edim Misocho, if you put the Edim on the inside, kosher, it is valid get. They should yochel also Pashat because it's the same as a get Pashat. In other words, once to just regard it as being untied and put the Edim on the inside and make it a regular document. Shagamiel says whatever the minhag Medina is, that if the minhag is to accept these documents, if we accept them, the minhag is to reject these documents, to reject them, and everything follows the custom of the country. We know this concept of Makushar at all. Rabbi Yami, so we tarish in a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. Rabbi Yami Sefer Mikna, I took the book of the document in this case of the purchase. There's a chosum, that which is sealed. The chosum is referring to Zamakushar. That's a get which is tied. Okay, I knew you couldn't be coming straight here and taking so long. There's did you get at least the drive-up window? I took the book of purchase as a chosum, that which is sealed, zam kusher, that's a get which is tied. As a goli, that's a quote from the pasuk again. The goli, the revealed, zam pashat shem kushar, that is the pashat, meaning the text written into the get makushar. V'esa mitzvah, v'esa chukim, the commandments and the laws should be zel. That's the difference between the get makushar and the get pashat. El shazeh, or the mashpia changes it elu. These are the laws. Zebish naim, zebish losha. A regular get. We're in the fourth line in the Gemara. A regular get, there are two types of get, there are two types of documents, even though we're using the word get tonight, it's generic. The two types of documents is one document which is written all on one sided piece of paper, and the witness is signed on that side. The other, you write a line, fold it over. Write a line, fold it over, and the witness is signed on the back. So in the get pashat, you need only two witnesses, but again, in Makushar, you need at least how many? Take a guess. No, too wild a guess. Three. At least three. Okay? Elish zevish naim zevish loisha. Zemitocho, also in the get pashut, a simple one, the Edim sign on the outside. The Zeh, get Makushar, me'achorav, they sign on the outside. Okay? For Abba the case, that's one way of expounding the pasuk in Yirmiyahu. The rabbis of Caesarea, they said, Vekach Sefer HaMiknah, I took the Sefer, the document, the purchase, Zeh Pashat. They put get Pashat actually into the pasuk. The simple one-sided get, they put into the pasuk. So the Sefer HaMiknah refers to a simple one-sided get. There's a Chosam Zeh Makushar, the sealed one, that's the two-sided get. There's a Golui, that which is revealed, Zeh Pashat Makushar, that is the text side of the tied get of the get makushar. There's a mitzvah, there's a chukim shebein zeh lezeh. The mitzvah the chukim is the commandment and laws between the two of them. Again, elu or elu shezeh b'shtayim zeh b'shlosha. This is with 2 and this is with 3 witnesses. This is written on the inside. This is on the outside. Okay. Rabbi Idi b'shem Rabbi Yirmiyah said, halacha mekushar kachu. The halacha about it right again, mekushar is like this. Kosev shem malva v'shem aloy v'shem eidim v'zman. In the top line, you write the name of the lender, the name of the borrower, and the names of the witnesses and the time. In other words, the date. Makasher. Then you tie it. V'chayz save Cain, and you write then Cain here means other stuff on the bottom, milamato. Okay. Now the way actually the Pshat Yisrael wants to change the girsa, he says v'chayzer, and I think it's better the way he changes it. V'chayzer v'chozer, and instead of v'chayzer Cain it says v'chayzer u'mekashron v'edim chaysmin milamato. You then tie it up, and then the witnesses sign on the bottom. Now, on the bottom means actually on the other side of the document. So says the Gemara, Chash lomar shem oziyef. Wait a minute. If the witnesses sign on the back of the document, how do you know that they didn't forge the inside of the document? The entire side that get Mekushar is forged. Now, according to the opinion which holds that the witnesses signed lengthwise, perpendicular to the text, we don't have such a kasha. This is the Meicha Mayim says. We don't have such a kasha if you hold that the witnesses sign perpendicular. Because when they sign perpendicular, they have to make their signature extend from the beginning of the text to the end of the text. So it means that they have read everything within the text, and they sign and testify to that. But what if they write parallel, right? Not perpendicular text, but parallel. So who says they read the whole text? How do you know that they read everything? Maybe there's stuff put in there which they didn't read. That's really Gemara's question. So says Gemara, Ravuna says, so Ravuna says that even by get Makushi, you write the following. The witnesses do not sign either on the bottom or on the back in this case. Until they read on they read on top, and they write Ani Ploini ben Ploini, I, the witness, Ruvain ben Shimon, Mikubal alai kokosamalon, I accept, meaning I verify all that is written above. Now, what we would write in our documents, in our gittin, which of course are not getting Mekusha generally, is Akol Shor V'Kayam. Everything is sustained and is valid, or everything is valid and sustained. But they wrote this. They wrote, I need plenty, etc. They must write this so that we know that they read everything in the document. So once they read everything in the document, so they attested everything in the document is true. Okay? And obviously once it's written at the end of the document, anything written beyond that, we'd assume is not true. But assume that everything which is written above that, they read and it's verified to be true. Okay? So that's how we work it. So that's how we know that so we have machlokas actually. One opinion holds, which we haven't brought down yet, that the Eidim sign perpendicular to the writing, and then they don't have to write this. The other opinion is that they sign parallel to the writing, and then this will be written at the end of the document. Okay? Rabbi Ba, the Shem Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Ba, the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah said, Tzricham Eidim, it should be according to Pnei Moshe, Shalol Yosef Chokim Yimocham Aksav Shnei Shitim. Eidim cannot be to the witness, this is in a regular document. Witnesses cannot sign more distant than 2 lines away from the writing. Why is that? Because what are we afraid of if you leave more than 2? Right. If you leave 2 lines blank, then somebody will squeeze an extra line. Now, of course, if you wrote a Kol Shar V'Kayim at the end, you couldn't do that, right? Because after our Kol Shar V'Kayim, everything is valid, sustained, you can't add anything. Because it's assuming that you didn't write that. So then, if you didn't write that, even in a get pashut, a simple one-sided get, you can't leave 2 lines open between the text and the witnesses. Okay?
If they're writing Kol Shor V'Kayim, they can still squeeze in.
No, but then we don't believe it. We don't accept anything written after Kol Shor V'Kayim. Those are the last accepted words in the document. Okay. Rabbi B'Shem said, Mekushar, the word Shekos was superfluous, Shar Teres Yisrael takes it out. Mekushar Edav LaOrko. He argues of Vilna. He says, you know how we know that a get Mekushar is valid and that everything in the text is bona fide? Because they sign perpendicular, they don't sign parallel, they sign perpendicular. So therefore it includes everything from the beginning of their signature, because the signature expands to the entire length of the text. It includes everything from the beginning of text to the end of text to text. Pashut. And again, Pashut, again, the word Shekos was superfluous. Eight of L'Rochbo, the witnesses are parallel. Ahen Milagav, Ahen Milabar. And again, Pashut, of course, the witnesses on the inside. Get Mekushar, the witnesses on the outside. Get Pashut, the witnesses on the inside. So they can't stand on its line on the writing. They'd obliterate the writing. Ahen Milabar, again, Mekushar, they sign on the outside, so that's where they sign the entire width. Okay? Now, the words Echiyav are also superfluous, and the Peshater also takes out the words Amar Rabbi Mana. Okay? We can leave them in, but it's really just a question Rabbi Mana is asking, which is a no-brainer, so therefore, obviously, Shater is interested in taking it out. Amar Mana, how do witnesses sign again Mekushar? Amar Rav Chuna said, they sign between each fold, in other words, between each tie, literally. In other words, you write, fold, witnesses sign on the back. So it's on the back side of the document, right? You write, fold, witness signs. You write, fold, witness signs. Okay, that's how it works. So
we've had this.
And in Bavli. In Bavli. In Bavli. Yeah, it's also Yerushalmi Gittin. It's Yerushalmi Gittin. So that we had it there. I'm surprised you guys remember these things. My memory is so bad. So says Umar, Amar about he said Edim Lishtar Mokum Shnei Shitim. Now you can't have between the witnesses and the document 2 lines, which either is going in a regular document, no get portion, or I was thinking, that's what today Moshe explains it, or I was thinking that maybe it means when you fold, obviously one line is going to be left blank, right? Because if you write, then fold, when the signs, so then a line, I think the way it's going to work is always going to be a blank line between the lines, right?
We can demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, but I think I did it Bavli. I don't think I did it in Yerushalmi. Did I do it in Bavli? Yeah. So therefore, so what it's saying is one line is okay empty, because that's the nature of again Mekushar, but not 2 lines. 2 lines empty in the middle of the text would render again Mekushar no good. Okay? So before we said about again Posh, now we're saying about again Mekushar. Shimon Bava Basra Yochanan said, Cholak mokom shnei shitim li'acher afilu koshu. Now we don't pass it this Yerushalmi. It's interesting. Rambam explicitly passes this again this, but he says like this: even if you have two lines, and you wrote something else in them, you had a whole document about Reuven owes Shimon $100, and Miller's document wrote Bob's phone number is 555-1212. And that took out one of the 2 lines, one of the 2 empty blank lines. The document is still possible. You can't, it's an invalid document. Hi, there's not enough room now there wasn't 2 lines left open. Nevertheless, doesn't matter. So he says, Cholak mokom shnei shitim li'acher afilu koshu, even whatever you wrote there, it's still possible. Amar Shmuel Yitzchak it's a Masdisa Amar Kei. So a Mishnah like this. This is a fascinating proof which goes totally against the Bible's interpretation of the Mishnah. The says there, the Mishnah in Gittin, now they're both Jews, but one is a Israeli Hebrew Jew and the other is a Greek Jew. So one sign's in Hebrew and the other sign's in Greek. So the Greeks, they write, according to the Bible, the problem is the Greeks write their father's name first, and we write our name first. Remember when we learned this, I had a lot of difficulty figuring it out. But so we write Reuven ben Shimon, that means Reuven the son of Shimon. They write Reuven ben Shimon, that means Shimon the son of Reuven, right? So therefore, the Bible says that if you have one aid who's Israeli, another aid who's Greek, another aid is Israeli, another aid who's Greek, so the document is possible. Because between the 2 witnesses, there are other witnesses, and we're afraid that those witnesses signed backwards. and people are going to come to be machshir shtar based on improper testimony. That's what the Bavli says. Okay, but the Yerushalmi says a different reason. The Yerushalmi says from here you see the two witnesses you want are the two witnesses, either the Israelis or the Greeks. You can't join the Israelis and Greeks together. And you see between the two Israelis you have one Greek, right? And that passes the document. So you see that even if you filled the available place with babble, meaning the other witness's testimony, that renders it possible. It's no good. You can't have anything interruption, even of babble. That's the way the Yerushalmi learns that. So even if you filled up those two lines with babble, it's still invalid. But it's a very strange proof because there it's not two lines, it's only one line. I guess they could say that they signed large, but in any event, that's where the Yerushalmi is learning that case. So that case is a case where you filled in lines with babble because the witnesses don't mesh together, since one is written so-and-so, son of so-and-so, the other is the other way around. So therefore, that renders the get possible. Okay? And so it says, Mishnah Misisam Rakain, Eidech Aviv, Eidech Yavani, Ivri Gabi Yavani, and the Israeli vis-a-vis the Greek, Lo Ki'inyan Acheru, isn't it like another marriage we Ki'inyan Zepei Moshe? So we see that the putting babble in between lines renders the document possible. Again, because the Yerushalmi is not concerned with the order of the names, who's the son of whom, right? Yerushalmi is concerned with the babble of having Greek between Hebrews, or Hebrews between Greeks. So said, but there's still the Lamaisa. Wait a minute, says Yerushalmi. But still, we have to prove that there's place of two lines here. It was like I just said, it's a difficult proof. Because here is saying that when you have a place of two lines, and you partially fill it with babble, the document remains puzzled. That was a statement made by Shimon Bar Fa, right? But this is not a place of two lines. You have one line per get. Says Yerushalmi, no. There are two lines here. Because Kavu Eidim Rechayim in Eksav Kadeshu Makri Makari Mimo. How distant can the witnesses be from the document in order that it should still be read with the document? What's that? The Rebbe. According to Rebbe, no, they can be further away as long as it's still read with the document. They can only be a line away. So here too, what the Yerushalmi would say, it's a good chap. Yerushalmi is saying, you know what the problem is? The first witness, whoever it is, Greek or Hebrew, doesn't matter. The first witness is one line away, because he's allowed to be one line away. Besides that, there's his signature itself. That's another line. That's two lines. Then finally you have the first witness you're taking into account. So that's two lines, one of which is filled with gibberish. Because the first witness is like writing Bob's witness phone number is 5551212. Because vis-a-vis the second witness, the first witness is gibberish. So you see the Yerushalmi says, here we see when you have two lines, and you filled one of them, even though you filled one of them with gibberish, the get is still possible. Because vis-a-vis the second witness, you have two lines, one of which is filled with the gibberish of the first witness, and therefore the get is possible. Okay? Theoretically, witness number 2, witness number 4 could join together. But they can't, because witness number 2 now, vis-a-vis him, the document is such that it's possible because of two lines, one of which is gibberish vis-a-vis him. It's fascinating again. Totally not like the Bavli's perspective, and the Rambam says explicitly in this case is okay.
Well, it's very logical, what you just explained.
I know, but we don't Basra because Bavli gives a different understanding. Bavli holds it's not gibberish, but it's just read differently, but it's not gibberish. Okay. Says the Rabbi Dustoimen Yudamer Malech Hasim Sideidim. Rabbi Dustoimen says we measure these two lines based on the size of the witnesses' signatures. Rabbi Yerushalmi Rav said Omar Mishari Ad Kidei we measure based on the size of L'cha U'Lecha. You know why we take L'cha U'Lecha? Yeah, I did say we weren't kidding. I finally understand now. It just hit me all of a sudden. I finally understand the piyut of Pesach night. I never understood it. L'cha u'lecha. Do you understand that? You probably don't sing it. You're such a big misnagid. So, did you ever thought, what does it mean, l'cha u'lecha? Right? It sounds like apikorsus. L'cha u'lecha. What do you mean, l'cha u'lecha? Are there two gods? But the pshat is, Yerushalmi gives here the example of two witnesses being l'cha u'lecha. So what it means is, we testify. L'cha u'lecha means we testify that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is l'cha Hashem amam l'cha. In other words, we're testifying by saying l'cha u'lecha. I don't know if it's pshat. It's not pshat. But l'cha u'lecha means we're witnesses. Just like Yerushalmi gives an example of how witnesses sign. Why specifically l'cha u'lecha? Because l'cha u'lecha has a lamed above the line and a chaf which goes below the line. So that's the maximum amount of space a signature can take up. Because it has both the letter which stretches above the line and the letter which stretches below the line. So the two lines distance between the document and the witnesses are based on two lines if when the signature contains a lamed and a chaf. I think I told you last time that English word, one of the major problems with early Hebrew word processors is the lamed, because there's no letter in the Latin language which goes above the line. The letters which go below the line, right? G, Q, when they're written lowercase, but there's no letter which goes above the line, so that caused major problems in word processors. Okay. So that's the chol. Actually, the language in the later on you'll see is melech uben melech, and the same idea. Instead of lecha and melech, but the mem is superfluous there. Basic sav misharin also. How do we measure it? Now this seems to be repeating the same thing over again, but there is a chiddush in a little bit in a couple of lines. Based on I started reckoning, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Hashem, Rabbi Shubsai said, again, the measure of the Adim's signature. But Chizkiah there's a kula here. We go to kula. Now there are two types of writing. Three types of writing. On again, there's the Adim's type, which is really two types, and then there's the Sefer's type, right? Because the Sefer is not the same. So we go to kula. Shema Yachesim Yada Adim Dak, if the witnesses wrote small. Vaksav Gas, and the Sofer wrote large. Gas, we give two lines based on the Sofer's handwriting. Chesim De Adim Gas, if the Adim signed large. Vaksav Dak, and the Sofer wrote small. Hochin Machar, here it's the type of me. Moshe Kretzet Achar Gas. We always go after the larger handwriting to determine the two lines. Alright, so it said, even if his signature is Yossi ben Yanai, there are no letters going above and below the line in Yossi ben Yanai, right? Actually, the Ben does. What? Yeah, the Nun. Maybe they didn't write the Ben, the Nun Sofis, I don't know. But the point is, Misharin Kedei Melech u Ben Melech. Regardless, we do it Melech u Ben Melech. In other words, we use, we must not be taking. Maybe it's because it doesn't have something going above the line, but Ben is problematic. Ben does go below the line. Anyway, you got the idea. In other words, even if it doesn't have letters going above the line, we give the benefit of assuming that the letters above the line, it's a kula. Okay? Rabbi Yirmiyah said, go to interpret this like the Meichel Mayim. Very interesting pshat. He said, Tzorach la'archik min ha'machak. Makom shtei shitim. Now he takes it. Tzarich is lav dafka. It doesn't mean you have to, but it means like this: if you have a document written completely on an erasure, it's all written on erased parchment. Okay, they used over parchment which wants to be erased. So then you can distance. You can even be more than two lines between the text and the witnesses. Why? Because if something has been erased twice, you can tell. There's a difference between being erased once. The Bible says the difference between being erased once and erased twice, and you can tell that difference. So therefore, in that case, if there had been written something between the text, and again, it's the way you don't read a kol shor v'kayim, obviously, because then you don't read anything after a kol shor v'kayim. But if there would be there had been something written in the text between the end of the document, the witnesses, and then it had been erased, so we'd be able to tell the difference. So therefore, in that case, where the whole document is written on the erasure, so it's not a problem to be distance between the Eidim and the text itself. Okay, so that's what I say. In that case, we're allowed to have even more than two lines difference. All right, it said Vafilu Pasha. This is true even by get Pasha, when normally 2 lines is a problem. Here it's okay. Okay. Rav Amar Macha Klus Shebaksav. If you have an erasure or a klus is it's like where you have that carrot, dangling. You forgot to put in a word and you put a carrot in and you put the letter on top. So Mal Klus Shebaksav Hazeh Zo Kuma. In other words, you have to write. The Eidim have to write this erasure or this carrot or this dangling word in this document. We sustain it. And it's like if you have make a mistake in a check, you're supposed to initial it. So here too, they're supposed to note in there by their signature, and this erasure or this insertion was done under our with our awareness. Okay. Rav Amar Zeukiyuma. Rav Amar also, this is the way to sustain it. So the Shaitan doesn't like this repetition, and he actually changes the gears a little bit. He says, Rav Amar he has tzorech lichtov. You have to write Zeuki and Rav Amar Zeukiyuma, whatever. Somehow or other, there's some repetition there. Rav Osher Yitzhak ben Chakula Cook said, Kol mashat yochel litlos b'machak klei. Anything you can assume has to do with an erasure, assume it has to do with an erasure. What does he mean? My kol shat yochel litlos b'machak klei. Now the next suk is very difficult to understand. Pshat. I don't like. I've run out of meforshim here at the end of Bava Basra. I didn't like the Pnei Moshe. I didn't like the Shai Teres Eretz Yisrael. I don't got no Lieberman no more. So all I have is my own head to go on. Okay. So says Gemara, seeing that it's bloated enough, I rely on it. So it says Gemara, Rabbi Yossi Kitzira. Rabbi Yossi, I guess it means either launderer or Rabbi Yossi the short. Chasani the Rabbi Yossi b'shir Shem Rabbi Yossi. It was the son-in-law of Rabbi Yossi. Said Yosa, said name Rabbi Yosa. Simfon Similel. You have a document of Kiddushin. So Shtar Kiddushin. As it's nigh, which is written on top, towards the top of the document. The Simcha Machi Milara, and the same condition is written on the bottom, but it's been erased. So they erased it. It was written twice, because very often document is repetitious. It's written twice, but the second time it's erased. But the first time it's still there. So what do you assume in that case? So as my I say, Garmalas Kiddushin Gemurim. Really, they decide they're going to make a complete and total Kiddushin. They're not going to make it out tonight. And that's why they erased it, right? So why did they erase it? Not just write a new document. Begin the low mates or b'nei get, in order not to have to pay from between the two of them for a new document. Machke, they erased it. Okay, so in order not to have to pay again, they erased it. So Rabban and Chashashin, the rabbis assume. They didn't want to pay for another get. So therefore we assume that they wanted to make Kiddushin Gemurim. How they left in the array the Tanai? We say that was just an oversight. It's where the document, basically that's what Gemara is saying, where the Tanai appeared twice and once it's clearly erased. So I say that the fact that they didn't erase it the second time is an oversight. That they really meant to erase it the second time because they didn't want to pay for new get, and they forgot. That's kol shata yochel litlos b'machak. Anything you can assume that should have been erased because it's been erased elsewhere, assume that it is tantamount to being erased.
Does it make a difference which one is erased and which one is left? Like top one being erased and the bottom?
So it should, but not in this case. Later on, I'm going to see cases where it does, but in this case, obviously, the Gemara is not dealing with that variable. Yeah, sometimes not concerned with that. Later on, the Gemara will be concerned with that, but right now, the Gemara is not. Now, here's a similar case. Shtar Nofik, that was the end of the hard part. Shtar Nofik, Rabbi Chuna, Rabbi Shimi. Rabbi Chuna produced the shtar against Rabbi Shimi. Ugrei Machik. It's interesting. The sum total was erased. There was a sum total, and konta, which is the English for count, lo machik. In other words, there was a sum total, and then there was a specification. There was a sum total that said, well, it would have said something like $100 he owes it. It says $10 for this debt, $10 for that debt, $10 for that purchase, and so on and so forth. There was an inventory, a specification. So what do you tell him? Rabbi Chuna said to Rabbi Shemi, Pukhamei, he said, the creditor said there, go check, to what point that count reaches, right? Go and check it out, go and check out the count, and we'll go out based on the count because the grand total is not there. So Nafak, the Rav Shimon went out and he came and he said, "In Triakuta, I made $3 on the count," meaning that the inventory, the specified inventory, came out to less than $3 less than what the original document was written for. So we obviously know that he gained $3, right? Okay, so that was his perspective. So it says the Gemara, Minafak. When he went out, Rav Chuna himself, the creditor, went to count the document himself, and the count he said, "Oh, the mitgared class. This guy wanted to gain $3. After this Esser, he really lost 10 because the inventory, the specific detailed count, actually had $10 more than Rav Chuna remembered. So he thought he was gaining. So they both counted differently. Rav Simi counted that it was $3 less than he remembered, and Rav Chuna counted it was $10 more than he remembered. Now, the truth is, they both could have been wrong. They both could have remembered wrong. But the name meant they did come up with different counts. Now, here it says, I have difficulty with this because here it says L'kayim, which means always a proof for. But in the Yerushalmi, in Gittin, parallel sugya, and also in the Bavli here, Rebbe argues with Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. So I can make it work both ways. Okay, it's possible to make it work both ways, with only a little bit of coaxing and no change of gears necessarily. But I like the Mechamayim who says that here too, Rebbe is actually coming not to sustain Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, but rather to argue Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel is the one who said that you can take a get Mekusher, make it to a get Pashut. He said in our Mishnah, you can take a tied up get and make it into a straight get. So says the Gemara, Rebbe argues on Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. How so? Gufa should get Mochiach loving Pashut, Meino Pashut. The get indicates if it's meant to be a get Pashut or not meant to be a get Pashut. Ma Gufa should get, what's the Gufa should get, the essence of the get. Amar Rabbi Ba, Midamar Huna, since Huna said, or Rav Huna said, Loam Einim Chesed Lamata Achikru Bo Milamalan Ani Ploini Ben Ploini Mukula Ani Kol Mashakasu Lamala. You can tell because by get Mekushar, Rav Huna, who said the Einim sign parallel, said that you have to write this sign off at the end of the get, which is that tantamount that we write on Kol Shor V'Kayo. You have to write Ani Ploini Ben Ploini. I, the witness, so and so, son of so and so everything written in the document, it's acceptable. So if a document says that, then you know it was what originally? The document has that verification, that sign off at the end. What was the document originally then? It was a Mekusher. Because you have to write then again Mekusher. And Mekusher, where the witnesses sign on the back and parallel to the lines, they must write before they sign, I read the document and I verify it. So that's the case, how can you turn Mekusher into a Pashut? We know it was a Mekusher, because it says, that it has this line at the end. So therefore it should have to remain Mekusher, right? Says the Gemara, did we learn Taifish Taurus Kenu? Doesn't want to know, but well, all documents can have that. Did we learn the form of all documents is to write such a thing? Says the Gemara, money Taifish Taurus Mekusharos Kenu. No, only a star Mekushar, not a regular star. Rabbi Avraham said, no, I feel Tamer Upashanu Mekushar. No, you can say that all documents can be written with this way. All documents are written with the language of Ani Pliny Ben Pliny. I saw everything which it says. Right? All documents are that way. How is what's the distinction between Mekusha and Pashut, which will allow a Mekusha to become a Pashut? You can say whom the Pashut Makiv. You can say by Pashut you dafka have to write this. You know why you dafka have to write this? Because by a Pashut, there's no other way to tell that the witnesses saw the entire document. You can only tell the witnesses saw the entire document if you have this sign off at the end, which says, I, so-and-so, son of so-and-so, saw it. By Mekusha, ain't a Makif, but by Mekusha, you actually don't need this. You know why by Mekusha you don't need it? Because by Mekusha you have another alternative. What is the other alternative you can do with again Mekusha? What you can do other than writing this? Other than writing the verification at the end, that the witnesses saw the entire document, what other alternative do you have with again Mekusha to make it work? Right, perpendicular. Sign perpendicular, right. So it says, on the contrary, the fact that you write this is no indication it was necessarily a Mekusha previously. Adarab, it's possible they always need this by a get Pashut and don't need it by a get Mekusha. Because by a get Mekusha you have an alternative. By a get Pashut you don't have no alternative. Okay? So, Lamaisa, it doesn't come out to be a proof against Rechani and Megamliel. We thought that again Mekusha is recognizable because it has to have this sign off of eyewitness son of where so and so saw this. That the conclusion was that no, that's not necessary. And even if it is there, it's not a proof that it's a Mekusha or a Pashut. Because on the contrary, you might need that more by a Pashut than by a Mekusha. It's a fascinating thing. Rabbi Yehuda said, this is just a generic halacha. If it's a place where they add on halacha, we add on. How so? Pashut b'shnayim, it's a place where a get Pashut is, although the halacha is that a get Pashut is two. If it should be, the Gemara Gittin says, should be minhag b'shloisha. If the minhag in a certain place to make three, even by get Pashut, take out the word hang, because it's not getting either. Also, in b'shloisha, you have to put in three witnesses. Which that's how kol. So Shulchan Aruch says how kol holicha achar minhag hamakom in the Mishnah. This is the minhag hamakom we follow. If it says if the place where they write normally with three, even though you only need two witnesses, you put three. And pashut mitoichel. Normally the witnesses by get pashut on the inside, right? By instead of mekusha me'achora v'hein. Should be minhag mitochel me'achor. If there's a place where they have a minhag, even by get pashut, the sign on the outside, they have such a minhag there. So then, then they have to follow that minhag. In places where they have weird minhagim, you have to follow their minhagim and write the documents. Okay? Get pashut Eid of Stein. The get pashut has two witnesses. Mekusha Eid of Shlosha. Mekusha normally has three. Pashut shkasa bo'eid. If the get pashut only has one witness, or Mekusha shkasa bo'shneinim, or the get Mekusha has two witnesses, shneim psulim, they're no good. Doesn't work. You have to go by the number of witnesses as specified by Chazal. Now, what if you own document $100? The aim of sealing is as in which are 20 sloim. Now, actually, in $100 is 25 sloim because they're $4 per seller, but you only wrote 20, which is only actually $80, right? So, what are we going after? Which number, right? One is the, like we had in our mouth, one is the kunto, one is the agro, one is the specific detailed inventory, one is the lump sum. So, assumes to go by the lower number. The creditor can only demand the lower amount. Zuzim Meir, the aim was still in tlasin, so therefore it works the other way. It says $100, which are 30 slime, and 30 slime is actually $120. Ela Monakesim can only demand $100. Zuzin, the inun. It says money, which is benim chaku. We don't know how much. Okay, the number is erased. It's no less than 2, right? Kesef Sloim Dinu V'Nim Chuchu, silver Sloim, and it's erased, and B'Shem is also no less than 2. Darkonos Diyunan, another type of coin. V'Nim Chuchu, and B'Chos Mishnayim, no less than 2. Now, the case here in the Gemara, everybody has a little bit of difficulty with the case. We're going to learn like the Mechamayim. As an I don't know if the truth is, I'm not sure Mechamayim is actually tried, but it's so cute that I have to learn this way. Okay? Tani Zuzi Dinun V'Nim Chuku. Chamisha. Everybody agrees. Both the Mav and Levi says the document originally said 5. That's Mechamayim's Chiddush. Both the Mav and Levi agree that it said 5. Everybody else interprets it more differently. Malva says it said 5, Levi says it said 2 or 3. But the way the Malva, the way the Mechamayim says, they both agree it said 5. But the Malva says the 5 got erased inadvertently. The Levi says baloney. We erased the 5 and made it 2 because I paid you back already 3. So we erased it. So everybody agrees initially said 5, but now the Shiloh is what it said after the erasure. Okay? So Tani, Amrei, they said, Ben Azar and Kiva argued. Chadamar Noisid Shraim, one says he pays 2. So he has to pay because that's all the documents, that's all the erasure indicates. It says Zuzin, it doesn't say how many. And therefore you pay 2. V'nishbal Shraim take a shvu on the rest of it. It's like Moed B'Miktzas. Because he also agrees that initially there were 5. So therefore now it's Moed B'Miktzas, he has to pay, he pays 2 and he takes a shvu on the rest. Chadamar one says, no! Came Shiloh, the Lokikar, said if he even didn't, he's the one who said it was originally 5. He didn't have to admit there was originally 5. That too was a concession on his part which he didn't have to make. So Loyalo, since if he hadn't conceded on the 5, Loyalo Stein, so he wouldn't have only gotten 2 for sure. So therefore, a note should be Noito. Ella, and take out the word Al, Mashahoida. It's basically the Mashbiach and Mechamayim both learn the same way at this point. He only gets 2 and there's no shvur. Because again, Moed B'Miktzas is where your taina is sustained, where your taina had a basis independently. If your taina's corroboration is my statement, so then I'm not a Moed B'Miktzas. That's the second opinion. First opinion holds still Moed B'Miktzas. Because I taina 5 and you agreed to 5 and you only conceded then 2, so that's Moed B'Miktzas. The second opinion holds no. It's true you taina 5, but that 5 is meaningless because the document doesn't say 5 unless we're considering with inconsistencies in documents. It says on top of the document $100. Mata Messiah in the bottom says $200. Milamala Messiah says on top of the document 200. Milamata below 100. Hakol holich achar tachta. This comes to what you asked before. Here we see we go where it says on the bottom. Okay, I'm a question. So why the bother writing it twice? Why write at the beginning and at the end? If something gets erased from the bottom, you learn from the top. Okay? In other words, we're afraid of something inadvertently will get erased. That's why we write it twice for security reasons. Okay? But if there's a discrepancy between the top and the bottom, we learn like the bottom. Now, by makushar, you can always learn the bottom from the top. Now, why is that? The reason why you can learn the bottom, the bottom from the top by makushar is because since by makushar, this is my theory, and I don't know if I'm right about this, but I think it makes sense. It's sort of about dafka makushar, and it's in line with the Shulchan Aruch. So about dafka makushar where you didn't write ani ploni ben ploni at the end, because you wrote ani ploni ben ploni makubal aikol mashakosuk. So that means in essence you're testifying primarily on the immediately adjacent thing. The tachton becomes ikar and the elyon becomes tafel. Because the elyon that it says about becomes primary, that which it says earlier in the document becomes secondary. But you don't write that the entire document is primary. And then you can extrapolate from top to bottom and bottom to top. That's what I think it is. And the truth of Shulchan Aruch is talking just about get pashut. So you extrapolate top to bottom, bottom to top, but only where it's you don't write out kol shor v'kayim. Because you write out kol shor v'kayim, which is in essence the same thing as I need plenty, but plenty, v'kubla. So then what becomes primary is the last part of the document. Okay, so that's why Dafka, he didn't write kol shor v'kayim or ani plenty ben plenty, because he signed on the back, because it's again makushar, then you can learn both from the top and the bottom. How so? Bein chanan v'chanani. Let's say at the beginning of the document it says Chanani. And the other document says Chanan. Obviously, there was no nun sofis there, because otherwise there'd be no issue, right? Or it says Ben Anan Lanani. I skipped actually a few words. Bosachas absteosis, you sustained by one letter discrepancy, even a two-letter discrepancy. So Ben Chanan Chani Ben Anan Lanani Bosachas Kaimin also. That works. Okay, you can learn. If there's one letter missing, you can learn from the other part. What about a large discrepancy? B'shteosis Ein Mekaimin also. No, not two letters. Two letters is too gross an error. You can't reconcile the part which is off by two letters from elsewhere in the document. By one letter, it's not two. Rabbi Yitzchak asked, Milamala Kosev Chanan Mata Nani. It's not Chanan and Chanani, but one says Chanan and one says Nani. Mal Amid Atach the Melion, in that case, can you learn the bottom from the top? Nani is not really a name, it's a nickname. You can learn from Chanan on top. Or, Chana, Malamed Atachton, Malamed Atachton, Chanan, the Elyon Mitachton, Malamed Tachton Elyon, Chanan, the Elyon Mitachton Nani. Can we learn either way? Tachton from Elyon or Elyon from Tachton? And the Gemara doesn't give a resolution. In other words, when it's off by two letter, when it's not off by two letters, but rather it's off by the entire, it's off by one letter actually, but it's one at the beginning of the letter and the other, and even chap till now. Here's off by one letter, but it's a letter transposed. There was in the previous case about Chanan and Chanani, they're both at the end, it's one letter at the end. But here it's Chanan and Nani, it's one letter, but it's transposed from the beginning of the word to the end of the word. So that's what he's asking. A tack-on letter you can learn. The document says Chanan in one place and Chanani in the other place, so you can tack on the yud to where it says Chanan. But the question is where it says Chanan in one place and Nani in the other place. It's another place. So it's changing one letter, but it's transposing one letter, which is the beginning to the end, and vice versa. So it's off by one letter, because two letters are the same. But that one letter it's off, you have to transpose and change. Shab, we go that far, and the Gemara doesn't come to any resolution about that. Okay? Halacha dat. Kaisman get liisha, we write a get for a man, Abba Bishan Ishto Imo, even though his wife is not present at the moment. Bishar liisha, write a receipt for the woman who received her ksuva, Abba Bishan Baal Imo, even though her ex-husband is not with her at the moment. Uvat Shem Akina, as long as they know the husband and wife. Baba Nason is the husband has to pay for the scribe to write the receipt because it's for his advantage. Write document for a borrower even though the lender's not here. Because somehow we don't write for the lender until the lender's here and acquiescing, obviously. But the borrower pays for the document because it's advantage. Write document for a seller. The buyer's not here. You don't write for the buyer until the seller's here. Then the buyer pays. You don't write documents which attest to betrothals, nisuin, or full marriages, unless they both are around and acquiescent. The chosn pays. Don't write documents that have to do sharecropping. Kabbalah is contracted. Unless they're both around. But Makabel, the sharecropper, the contractor, he pays. Don't write documents which attest either to the claims of each litigant in the court case or attest to the dayanim that they agreed upon to serve on the court. Nor any act of basin is Hashem unless both litigants are around. There they both have to pay. Actually write two duplicates, one for each litigant. So each person gets a duplicate of the court proceedings. So Amarai Barabba said, when you write a get, you have to know both the man and the woman. Amarai Biloy said, ish begito. No, you only have to know the man if you're writing a get. You only have to know the woman if you're writing a receipt. Okay? Masnisa pliga al Rabbi. Now it should be Rabbi Lo. And actually, the Gemara again is far longer. It has much greater detail than the Gemara over here. And but in line with the Gemara again, it should be Lo here and Ba later on. It's both Ba here, Lo later on. Okay, we're going to learn. Pnei Moshe even says that, although he doesn't make the change actually in the text of Gemara, but it's obvious that that's the change that was made. Masisa pliga Rabbi Lo. Rabbi Lo said you only have to know one and not the other. Said Hiskan Gamil She'azokin She'ichtov Ish Ploini V'chol Shem She'yeshlo. Says you have to write in a get so and so's name, so and so, and any name which he has. Ish Ploini V'chol Shem She'yeshlo, and the so and so woman and any name she has. And we do that in our Gittin, right? We write his so and so who's called such and such, whose name is such and such. Right, all possible names which we're aware of, and all possible names which we're aware of for her. So that means we have to know both him and her. Right now, like Rabbi Lo said, we only have to know the man. He would say that you have to know both. So I don't argue with Rabbi Lo. So you have to because people might know some names and not other names, and that rectifies the world to write a possible name and know. Says Marvafilu Rabbi Bar Lazy Pliga. Doesn't that Mishnah also argue Rabbi Ba, who said you have to know both? It says Beishani Mishana Shmo Shmo Shem Yiro V'Shem Yiro. At the beginning, it says over there that when they used to write Gittin, then they used to write. They used to have to say over. In other words, they have to ascertain the names of the man and the woman, and the name of her city and the name of his city. So from here we learn that they didn't know necessarily. In other words, they had to ask the man what his wife's name was. So it seems like at least initially the Gemara held that you didn't have to know who you didn't have to recognize her as long as he was around and he gave you the information. According to initially that suffice, which is not like Rabbi Bo, who says you have to know both of them. Okay, turning the page. Halacha. Somebody who paid part of his loan. In other words, he had a note out against him, and he paid part of it, not all of it. The so he gave his document out to the third party to hold on to. And he said to him, if I don't pay you back till so-and-so day, Taylor Star give his document and he can collect the whole thing again. Which, of course, is what kind of transaction? No, that's true, too. But what kind of transaction? It says, I paid up of $100 that I paid up $50. Now we give a document to a third party to hold on to. We tell the third party, hold on to a certain day. If I don't pay back the other $50, then give the credit to the whole document back. It's called an asmachta. In other words, he doesn't expect that he's not going to pay him back by that date. Right. He doesn't expect that he's have to pay the additional $50. That he won't pay the $50 is too low, and he's going to have to go back and pay the $100. That type of commitment is called an asmachta. In the Yerushalmi, it's not called asmachta, it's called the itzumim, penalties. In other words, I accept upon myself a penalty. Okay? So he gives it says give the document back to the original creditor because he accepted upon himself this penalty. Says you don't give it back. He didn't really mean it. He never expected not to default by that date. So therefore, his statement that he wanted to give it back is a lot of hot air. He didn't really mean it. Don't pay attention to what he said. Okay? The somebody whose document became erased, but the witnesses still remember the contents of the document. My love Adim, you take witnesses, but they come in front of the court. And they make a kiyum, in other words, they rewrite the shtar. And in the rewritten shtar, it says, Ish ploini, ben ish ploini, nimchak shtoro. His document was erased. B'yoyim ploni on so-and-so date. Ploni Adam and so-and-so were his witnesses. In other words, Basin writes a substitute shtar. Okay? Getting back to Smachta, Tani Itzumin. Now, Tani here is like Lieberman says in Shari Yisrael, also says over here, Tani is not always a price on the Bav in Yerushalmi. And here too, it has to do with Amoraim. So Itzumim actually are, the Pnei Moshe explains in great detail here, penalties are, if I don't come to New York, let's say, by January 30th, so I owe you $100. And you write, if I don't come to New York by January 30th, I owe you $100, right? So that's Yitzumi. In other words, we pledge penalties to each other. So that's me. So Rabbi Avo, Gabi, Rabbi Acha, Rabbi Avo, who was by Rabbi Acha. Sorry, I'm not even sleeping and I got that wrong. Rabbi Avo, Gabi. Rabbi Avo would collect these penalties. Rabbi Acha, Gabi. Rabbi Acha would collect these penalties. Rabbi Ami, Gabi. Rabbi Ami collected the penalties. Rabbi Yoinav, Rabbi Yossi, Lo Gabi, they wouldn't collect these penalties. Why? Because the principle of Asmachta. Okay? They didn't really mean it. Amar Rabbi Munara said, Avagav Leitz Rabbi Yossi Gabi Itzumim. You know, Rabbi Yossi would not collect penalties, self-inflicted penalties under normal circumstances. You can see it's if a person gives his son as an apprentice, and the master and the father accept by themselves penalties if the apprenticeship does not go to term. So then the Hugavi, the father, can collect from the master, because as the Pnei Moshe brings down from Gittin, it says he needed his son to learn a trade desperately, so therefore he really expected this penalty. And the person who pledged the penalty, the master, knew the severity of the situation. So our cases where the severity and the weightiness of the matter involved make the penalties have teeth. They make the penalties real. Okay? Amar Abuka said, Tana, we learned B'Ksuvas Bei Levi. Well, Bei Levi, the Mashbiel says Ksuvas here doesn't mean the Masechta Ksuvas, rather in the literature of the house of Levi. If somebody says my document is lost, and we make for him a kiyum, of course, when we have witnesses like we had in the Mishnah. Even documents which attest either to having selected judges or having come to specific kindness in a court case, we make a kiyum as well. In that case, if they're lost, but they didn't remember what it said there, so then we sustain them. Okay, it's 10:15, so we'll stop here this evening.